Have you checked the children? Your little master.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes that is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I am known on this level of the tower as Jaime and Fuego, and if it please you join me here for a bit of rather sad palaver here on Hail to Stephen King. That's right, all those tomes that you see behind us, at this amazing tower, that is right there. But I'm basically here to lament what is perceivably, unless something very strange transpires in the 11th hour, the honestly not that surprising demise of the Dark Tower television series on Amazon that had been in development for many years. We had Jasper Paikkonen, I have no idea how to properly pronounce this. I'm assuming somewhere in Scandinavia. I believe he was either Norwegian or Swedish, if I'm not mistaken. He was going to be our new Man in Black. We also had Sam Strike, who, I loved him in Monster Party, but he was also in Chernobyl. He was in Sci-Fi's science fiction series. Something science fiction on Sci-Fi. How funny is that? But yeah, it was like a space horror type thing called Night Flyers that only lasted about a season or so. So I was really stoked for this series based on the casting of those two alone. Also rumors of all kinds of different people like Michael Rooker, and just the fact that it was supposed to tell the young story of Roland Deschain and do it in the actual chronological order as opposed to in the order of the book releases and stuff like that. I liked when Marvel took that approach with Robin Firth at the helm, who was the research assistant for King for a number of years, and helped make sure that steered the course, and yet not only did everything in just the age of Roland, as he starts out as a young man, and first gets his guns and goes out on his first mission with his original quartet of Bert and Elaine and stuff. And so I love all the stuff from the original Gunslinger in the flashbacks and the Wizard and Glass flashbacks that they basically just put together into a cohesive narrative, Chariot Tree and all that stuff, and the Forbidden Love with Ms. Delgado. I really, really love that story, and I felt like it did make sense piecing it and pairing it together. I've seen some people on my Hail to Stephen King quartet talk about the fact that they did not like that particular approach, and to each their own. But as I've constantly said on this show for nearly 200 episodes now, this being the 197th if I'm not mistaken, and there was in fact another episode that was supposed to air this Saturday, this morning, since we have switched from evenings to mornings with the scaling back of some stuff on the horror show as we continue to forge forward in pre-production for Dylan's New Nightmare. But I have talked for a long time about the fact that the Young Roland stuff is indeed my favorite stuff. That's why I love 4.5, The One Through the Keyhole, so much. It's why Wizard and Glass is my personal favorite. Wizard and Glass is my personal favorite because we get the best of both worlds, starts with both organs. Beautiful. Yeah, anyway, I'm not going to go into that full Clerks quote, but nonetheless, the fact that we get the new quartet and the old quartet, the fact that we get all of those tie-ins with The Stand and just the nuances of a world that is very similar to ours, but yet not quite the same. It's just very cool development for Kingverse stuff, and so, I really was down with that approach in the Marvel Comics and how they did it in the actual, chronological age order, and I was very cool with Amazon actually doing the same thing, presumably, with this from what all the synopsises had said. And it was a bummer earlier this week when, Deadline first broke the report that Amazon was not going to be going forward with this particular show. And it seemed rather skeptical, at the time, at least on my end. And I talked about this also in the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group, where everybody was just like, oh, we're so excited for this Dark Tower TV series. And I was like, well, hold your horses. It's Amazon, and Amazon is notorious for ordering pilots and yet not ordering things to series. And that's exactly what they did here. They financed a pilot that had been worked on for a number of years, actually. I mean, we're talking all the way back to even before the Dark Tower film came out in 2017. Ugh, I still have PTSD about the Dark Tower, film from 2017 with Idris Elba and stuff. Matthew McConaughey, the McConaissance, I should specify, is no more. But yeah, we had word about that ever since the initial inception of this universe of Dark Tower stuff that they were trying to build, where they were like, okay, we're going to do feature films that follow like the adult Roland, but then we're also going to have this television series that follows the young Roland, and there's going to be flashbacks. It's going to all just, it's all going to fit together. It's going to be great. And of course, on paper, that theory seems okay, because that's really what the books did, right? So, I mean, why would that not make sense? And yet, I felt like it was very ambitious, especially for a property that only the most hardcore of hardcore Psy King fans are aware of. I mean, the most devout Tower junkies and CRs are the ones who are in to these stories, because, I mean, the mainstream audience, especially with the King resurgence in this past couple of years, the King Assans, as I've called it, those people know about like Carrie and The Shining and Salem's Lot and It and Misery. They even know about King stuff that they probably don't even know is King stuff, like Stand By Me and Shawshank and stuff of that nature, Green Mile. But yeah, they're really, I mean, the Dark Tower is like a subsect of a subsect of a subsect. It's like, it's the most who want to delve as deep into the King verse as possible. Those are the ones who are into this amalgamation of Western, science fiction, fantasy, horror, like the mobster mafia craziness, I mean, psychedelic, otherworldly wackiness, and there are so many different vibes coming together in these stories. And I mean, consult all of my prior reviews of those 8 books, plus Little Sisters of the Eluria, obviously, if you really want some adequate context, if you want things spoiled and you just want to kind of get like a little toe, dipping into to see what's going on. But I knew that the ambition of this project and, its tie-in film was going to be a lot for people to, first and foremost on the executive side of things, the people actually writing the checks, to be on board with. I think Ron Howard was still involved in an executive producer mentality, because he was originally supposed to direct the Dark Tower movie many, many years ago. We're talking 15, close to 20 years ago, when there was talk of Javier Bardem as the gunslinger, Mr. Deschain, which I think would have been amazing. And then there was talk of various other cool bits of casting and stuff like that. I think Norman Reedus at one point. It was either Norman Reedus or it was dude from Breaking Bad, whose name eludes me. Both of them, I think their names were floated around for Eddie Dean and, various other rumors for other casting that was nowhere near substantial. But nonetheless, when Howard left the project as director and shifted over to being a producer/EP type of role, I already had a vibe that this was being pushed on the back burners, and lo and behold, we had this no-name nothingness guy who directed the film. And so when the film was a big bust, I thought that there was not even a chance for them to even film a pilot. But they still forged forward and they filmed a pilot that we may never see. And that would be just a travesty, la travesty, if we can never at least even see that pilot leaked and give us a chance to check it out. But I mean, there may be a lot of post-production that Amazon is pulling the plug right now, because they're like, we don't want to dump more money into this for the post-production aspect, since you guys have wrapped shooting on the pilot. Yeah, we're not just gonna throw away money. We have so much more invested in their Lord of the Rings series that they're adamantly working on, bringing back some of the cast members from those films that were done by Guillermo and everything, or excuse me, by Peter Jackson. Man, I'm saying Guillermo. Guillermo was originally supposed to do The Hobbit, and then he had to leave for contractual obligations and stuff, now that I recall. So I mean, yeah, Jackson's universe is making its way to Amazon Television, and so they're basically like, yeah, this is more of a proven sure thing. This is an IP that we know is going to get the type of attention that we think it deserves. But yet the one that's making me scratch my head a little bit, and I have some friends who are just adamant about this series of books, and I know it's a vast, vast one. So the Robert Jordan Wheel of Time series is another thing in development at Amazon, and that, along with the Lord of the Rings stuff, those have all been like ordered a series. In fact, the Lord of the Rings has been already renewed for a second season, even though we haven't even seen the first one, and I don't even think it's coming till like early 2021. So we're talking major, major looking ahead. But yeah, whereas the Tolkien stuff makes sense, it's the unproven project of Robert Jordan that, I mean, I'd say that's probably on par with like the uncertainty of how well Doom is gonna perform, you know, this December. I'm immensely excited to see what Denis does with that project. But I mean, the Lynch stuff it had its niche, you know, it's very cult. And that was more so for fans of the books, but even fans of the books I've spoken with a lot didn't really like the Lynch film very much, even the extended director's cut. Most of us, I've only read the first couple Dune books, and it's been many years at this point, but most of us liked the stuff on Sci-Fi a little bit better. You know, the first one was just okay, but Children of Dune was actually quite good. So it's, you know, Wheel of Time and all of those associative books by Jordan, they have a similar uncertainty to the Herbert stuff. And so that's where I'm like, really, you know, with as hot as Stephen King is right now, you know, you're gonna go with the stuff that's never been on screen before, you know? I mean, it's just a little odd to me, but, you know, really the thing that was in the Deadline report was that they said the pilot just did not come into them at the quality that they were anticipating and at a quality that they thought was comparable with the stuff in development from those other two properties. So that's lame and disappointing, although, you know, another thing, back to point to my Hail group, there were people chiming in and saying, you know, don't do another version of it if it's once again going to be half-assed and not very good. And I was reading the tweets from Glenn Mazzara, who was the guy who did Damien, and he was on some of the most celebrated years of The Walking Dead as showrunner. I think halfway through 2, and then he did like 3 and 4, the stuff that was really bomb, where you brought in like Woodbury and, you know, the Governor and all that stuff. And yeah, that was when the show, at least for me, was at its height of quality, popularity, as far as viewership, all that different stuff. And you know, he just he didn't shut the door on it, you know, but he did say that he thought he worked with an esteemed team of awesome people, and that he was very proud of what they put together, and he thought that King and Robin Firth were proud of the work that he had done. But then again, you know, Cy King said that he thought the sci-fi version of The Mist was great. So I don't know. We can't really trust him when he's boasting about his properties at this particular point. He tried to get everybody hyped up about the Dark Tower movie, and then later on pulled a James Cameron and went on to say that, yeah, it wasn't very good. I'll admit it. It should have been R-rated. It should have not been like 90-something minutes, and, you know, all of the different, you know, pitfalls and, you know, failures and so on and so forth. That it's very tough to adapt, though. You know, you really... For me, you really should take the television territory, which is where I had so much hope for this, especially with the team and with the cast involved with it. Mazzara did say on Twitter that there are other worlds than these, as if to imply that they are trying to shop the show around, you know, now that Amazon has let it go and they just have this pilot. We've seen it happen, you know, it just happened with Lucifer on Netflix, but that was a show that was proven and had viewership when it jumped networks, and, you know, comedy stuff like, I don't know, Brooklyn, whatever the hell it is. It's not 911. Is it Brooklyn 911? I don't know. It's the show with Sandberg and stuff. I know that jumped recently from, I think, Fox to NBC, where it would have made a lot more sense because Sandberg was, you know, the NBC, you know, SNL dude for so long. In any event, if it is in fact being shopped around as Entertainment Weekly, and lots of other people have gone on to report after the initial, you know, bit from Deadline where they're saying, yes, he's trying to find new life for it somewhere else, and I don't know, and it seemed much more like just eulogy in most of the tweets, as opposed to something hopeful where he really thinks he can find a home for it somewhere else, you know. Could we have another turn of the wheel? Could they find another destination for it, you know, another level of that proverbial tower? Maybe where they could give them even more freedom, although Amazon really lets people run with it. I don't know. But now I have to segue into, I guess, the second half of what I wanted to talk about here, in the fact that, it's a very tough just series to adapt for the sheer fact that it's not well known, because it is that subsidiary of all that subsidiaries. It's very niche in its regard, and it also, to be done properly, would be pricey, as far as all of the melding of all of those different genres and ideas and stuff like that. And you would have to have a dedicated, just plan and formula. You would obviously be just wiping the slate clean and doing a complete reboot, which is what they were planning on here. But yet, I've talked to a few people who actually, for whatever reason, liked that Dark Tower film, and so I would imagine they would be massively confused at the fact that we changed our gunslinger from Idris Elba, a badass African-American guy, to, this, I don't know, Clint Eastwood-looking character like he was always envisioned. On the TV series, it was supposed to be significantly younger with the same strike actor, but it just... I feel like they made so many just poor choices with the film as far as alterations, as far as just melding so many plot points together into this weird greatest hits of sorts. There were breakers, which we don't get till way later in the story, and just characters that don't even pop up till the very back half of it, and yet over-the-top performance in a lot of ways by McConaughey that I did not like so much, although I did think the actor who played Jake, wasn't bad, but the reshoots were terrible in the fact that the timbre of his voice was changing. Kid was going through puberty. He even looked a little bit taller in some of the scenes, with the reshoots. The same thing happened with the kids in It between 2017 and the 2019 sequel. So there was a sweet spot for this property to get done properly, and I honestly think it probably had its best chance if they were going to go film by film around the same time that we had stuff in theaters, every year or so, like Harry Potter, like the Lord of the Rings films. That was and even Avatar, that was the sweet spot where this property could have been made, because you had Howard and you had all these big time people behind it, and it should have been made. They should have just, as much as in this day and age, I would have loved the television approach, because 8 to 10 episodes for a Stephen King novel makes so much more sense with how rich his stuff is, with exposition, character development, just massive amounts of story beats. You wouldn't have to condense anywhere near as much. Case point being what has been done with The Outsider thus far. It looks terrific. What has been done with Mr. Mercedes in the 3 seasons that are presumably done at this point. 11/22/63, the event series format works the absolute best, in my opinion, for King stuff. But that's kind of more of a recent development in the last 5-7 years or so. Stuff like True Detective and, going forward. HBO, the Amazons, even Netflix and Hulu to a degree, they are really big on their event series and their limited miniseries, and the resurgence of all of that, the popularity, all of the accolades that they have seen from, stuff like the Globes and, various other award shows, Emmys and whatnot. So that format makes much more sense now and perhaps could produce a better product, but I still feel like the likelihood of this actually being done was better for the big screen about 15 years ago. And at this point, I'm not hopeful, and I am utterly heartbroken at just kind of trying to come to terms with the reality of this series probably never seeing something that I will take pride in and that I will shed a tear at seeing done well, and not just well on screen, but in a captivating fashion that will not only appease me, but please me, and just give me so much fulfillment for a series that I adore so immensely, and yet also be able to straddle that line where they can still engage and captivate and reel in new people who will enjoy what they're seeing on screen, and then in turn go and give these less read Psy King books a chance. I mean, can you imagine how much people would flock to and just be going bonkers for all of the additional details and just bits of this massive, just all-encompassing multiverse that we have in those Dark Tower books? if there was a successful film or television franchise out there that was well produced, that was fantastically acted, that looked good, that just gave so much of an indication as to what could still be told and what could still be forged on film, I'm really bummed, guys. I'm really bummed. And yeah, you were originally going to see me talk about the 60 pages of the cannibals that's on StephenKing.com, because the book of the month this month is none other than Under the Dome. That's why it is seated right there. Started it about a week or so ago, and I'm a few hundred pages in, and you know, I still have a few weeks, as all of you do, to get through that. But yeah, I was gonna put up this video about the cannibals and just the 60 pages of it that I read that are on King's page, and just some of the differences, you know, because it really was the inception, as King himself says, for what eventually became Under the Dome, albeit in that just very raw early 80s version. It was basically about people trapped in an apartment complex and so on, as opposed to being trapped under a dome. But yeah, it's just fun to see how the ideas have changed and whatnot. So look forward to that as the 198th episode of Hail to Stephen King. That will be coming next Saturday. But yes, that's a little fun preparation that could potentially be done as you make all of your way through the January book of the month, which is right over there, Under the Dome. And on Saturday, February 1st, that afternoon, we will be doing a full live spoiler discussion, as we always do, about the recent anniversary celebrating Under the Dome and the massively bloated tome that it is. I have mixed feelings about it, but I'm very much looking forward to talking about it with all of you. And I obviously have mixed feelings and not as much hope as I would love to have about the fact that maybe somebody else will pick up this Dark Tower television series and decide to actually order it and you know, give it some more time to really let it become what all of us hoped that it would be. But are you really that surprised? I'm not, unfortunately, and I've been bracing myself for this, but you know, it still doesn't make it any easier necessarily. So yeah, that is the end of things for this discussion, everybody. I've been Jaime and Fuego. You can find me on all social media sectors like Twitter and Instagram, Facebook, here on YouTube, where I also have my own personal channel called Infuegotainment. It's youtube.com/Jaime and Fuego, or you can just search for Infuegotainment. Just put up a review of 1917 from last week. Maybe a Bad Boys for Life review, I don't know. Red Team Go. Lots of Star Wars coverage, though, including reviews of the seasons of the Clone Wars as we approach the 7th season on Disney+. I reviewed the entirety of The Mandalorian. Lots of comedies, art house cinema, superhero stuff, you name it, all on Fuegotainment. But obviously, if you're here, you are checking out the Spooktacular, or at least curious about that. And so yeah, here on The Horror Show, we put out at least one video every single day, sometimes more in certain circumstances. Really, you know, we did 2 a day for the longest time. We had to scale it back a little bit as we go further towards our Freddy Krueger fan film. That's right, that Cecil has written and directed. There is an original song by my band Chiron. Facebook.com /ChironBandAZ and ReverbNation.com /ChironBandAZ if you have any interest in checking out our music. But we have an original song that's going to be in that film. Cecil has done a terrific job with the script, and I'm actually, as of the last few days, really putting a lot of elbow grease into another big surprise that I am working on as well in a similar vein. And then lastly, every Monday evening, typically on Mondays, but sometimes we have to reschedule. Sometimes life comes at you fast, whether it's, you know, conflict, sickness, whatever the hell it may be. But usually on Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on the Willis Greedia YouTube channel, myself, Lindsay Mimsy from My 2 Cents of Nonsense, and obviously the showrunner and the founder of the Feast, CP himself, on the Willis Greedia YouTube channel, participate in Show Business, #Tizzle Show Business, and that's where we do some box office breakdown numbers from the previous weekend, look ahead to the upcoming, and have some awesome palaver about the biggest entertainment stories of the past week. So, I've been Fuego, y'all have been awesome, and until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, sin amigos, constant readers and viewers alike, but I hope that we get together once again sooner rather than later. And until then, stay scared and read Stephen King, because really at this point, all we have is to read The Dark Tower. I do not recommend watching that movie.